What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the Warner Bros. Discovery news that happened yesterday revolving around DC games. Now, it was technically DC at large, right? Pretty much the statement yesterday is, hey, we have no idea what we're doing. We kind of realize we need a leader to watch over all of the different projects that we're doing in terms of, like, say, a DC universe, right? So we need that, and we need to start to revitalize some of these top-tier characters that we haven't been doing anything with. Name dropping, I believe, Superman in particular. Now, I don't want Henry Cavill recast, so hopefully when they say not doing enough, they literally mean they're not making movies, not necessarily that they're mismaking the movies. But along with that quote came stuff about games as well. It's a pretty short line, honestly, in terms of the entire thing, but they were also talking about games that they want to push more DC games out there, and you could, I guess, make the connection that they were kind of talking in the same lingo as everything else. So basically, not necessarily like they need an overseer of it, but pretty much like, hey, we do not have a big enough push in terms of games whatsoever. And they're right. Now, they're not right in terms of the next couple years. What's very interesting, I've talked about this before for DC games, is, if you're looking at this as the starting point, let's say 2022 is the starting point for DC games, it's pretty darn solid. Like, it's actually pretty comparable in ways to Marvel. Now, we've had Spider-Man, we've had Miles Morales, but we've had also Marvel's Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy. I guess if you go back in the day as well, you had Telltale's Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's going pretty far. And then, upcoming Wolverine, obviously you have Marvel's Midnight Suns, Amy Hennig game, that game is going to be a Marvel game, right? So you have Marvel games coming out. And then in terms of DC, you got Gotham Knights, you got Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and you have Wonder Woman. Now, it's possible those three games could all release within the next, say, 2 years, which would be, again, a very good starting point. And, I tweeted this out and I said, like, this is going to take a long time to implement. And I guess what I mean by that is if they're now, like literally yesterday, now probably not yesterday, right? But if they're realizing just now that, hey, in terms of DC, hey, what have we had? And they're like, well, sir, Injustice 2 came out in 2017. And you're like, well, that was 5 years ago. Anything else? Well, Arkham Knight was 2015, and then you go to Arkham Origins, and it's like, okay, I guess Injustice 1, and it's like, all right, well, it doesn't really seem like we have a lot of stuff. Specifically, the last 5 years, there's been absolutely nothing of substance. So you need to fix that. And again, this year I think is a really good starting point. I guess what I hope is that there's a long-term plan already in place, because or you start it right now, because obviously we know game development takes, if you're literally starting something from scratch, like nothing, it'll take probably four or 5 years. Now, if you're doing a sequel, if you're reusing assets, stuff like that, could you shorten it to like 3 or so years? Yeah, probably. But I guess my point is, if you start now, if they say, hey, we need more teams on this, because WB Montreal, who hasn't made a game in 9 years, is coming out with Gotham Knights, and yeah, they have a second game, but do we want them leading the charge? Probably not. It probably should be other people leading the charge, if we're being honest, right? So, okay, well, who else do we have? Well, we have Rocksteady. Well, we also have NetherRealm, but see, they go back and forth. They don't always make Injustice games, and they probably aren't doing one right now, sir. And then they're like, okay, well, that's kind of you know what I mean? So they need more teams, I think, and kind of branch out. And I've said this before, really all you need to do is do like Marvel does. I'm not saying Marvel's like the perfect blueprint, because there's definitely been hits and misses, and you're not guaranteed an amazing product by just kind of handing out licenses, right? Like, I understand that, but I do think Marvel's idea, and really it was what we wanted Star Wars to do, right? Instead of going to EA, like it would be a Wild West if you give Star Wars to anybody. It is, and we've seen what it looks like, right? We've seen Star Wars when it's not bound to one publisher, and what it is some games that are total trash, some games that are okay, and but they're very interesting, right? It's like, oh, that's a cool concept, but it didn't quite work. And then you have some home runs. Like, that's what you get when you kind of hand them out. Again, like, you're not going to get everyone to be good, but you're building kind of an ecosystem out there, right? And, again, like, love or hate Marvel's Avengers, I'm not the biggest fan, right? At least you're trying, you're handing them out. You're saying, hey, well, we'll give a couple to you, and we'll see, how can you handle Guardians of the Galaxy? Now, obviously, that was a different team, right? But how do you handle that? Well, that turned out to be like a game of the year. Well, how do you handle Marvel's Avengers? Well, that turned out to not be game of the year. Let's give Sony a couple. Let's hand them out. Let's give, former, the team that made the XCOM games, let's give them one. Let's see what what a almost like a spiritual kind of XCOM, but it's not XCOM, looks like in a Marvel universe. Like, that's how you get innovation, is basically what I'm saying. So I have no problem with WB Montreal being kind of a leader in it, Rocksteady being a leader in it, and even if you want to make Monolith, if you want them to kind of, at the same time, Monolith has proven to be very talented in other ways, non-DC, so they don't have to just make DC games, but you should be handing them out. And because you don't have infinite developers, really, right? I mean, Warner Bros. Does not have too many developers. Hand them out. Give it to teams that or kind of like, freelance teams, third parties, teams that aren't owned by anybody, or you make deals. And now, deals is where you're going to get into trouble, right? Say, hey, Microsoft, you want, and then give them a character, and then say, hey, Sony, you want, give them a character. That's going to make people mad. But, I mean, you could do that too, and that's how you're going to get these games. So I hope that's what they realize, because they can't do it on their own. They can't create a multi-year ecosystem by themselves with just a couple teams. You need to hand them out, to start handing them out. And again, they're not all going to be good. But again, this news story tells me they know that. They're in, they understand that, and they're probably going to be implementing it right now. The issue is it takes years for that to be implemented. You know what I mean? Like, they can make a deal tomorrow with Sony, but will that game come out tomorrow? No, it'll take 3 to 4 years. Now, again, within the next 2, we're going to have Wonder Woman, all that stuff, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, and Gotham Knights. So when that's done, then the next wave could be the second WB Montreal game. It could be Injustice 3, so you have those 2, and then have 2 or 3 other, okay, here's a Sony one, we gave it to Capcom, just come up with one, right? And then go from there. So hopefully that happens, and I think it will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. If you want to follow me anywhere else, all my social media is in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys on the next video.